Have you ever considered a career in communications or journalism or broadcasting? If you have, well, you are in the right place, the right time. Welcome to A Walk in My Shoes. I am Dan Vasquez, and today is a very special day because we have with us um, no one else than Kurt Ludlow, TV, ABC6, and Fox Channel 28 news anchor. And he's here with us live. And Kurt, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to A Walk in My Shoes.
Dan, I'm so excited to be a part of it. Thank you for having me, and I'm really interested to see where the conversation goes today. I'm happy to be a part of it. You all do such great work. I'm big fans of the Literacy Council and all you do, and anything I can do to help kind of steer people who may be thinking about a career in journalism or TV or communications. I'm happy to do it.
Well, we really appreciate your time, and I'm also really excited and happy to start talking with you about this. So let's get started. First of all, I just wanted to hear your personal story. We're very intrigued by your career and what you have done. You are a local celebrity here in Columbus, and we're
Oh.
just so happy to have you.
Well, thank you. My story begins in a small town in Colorado. I was born and raised in a town called Canyon City. Back then, probably a population of 30,000 people. The claim to fame was it houses many prisons. So the primary industry there in our town in Canyon City was the prison system.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so I kind of grew up around that. And like a lot of kids, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Um, I enjoyed school. I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed reading. I enjoyed performing too, musicals and musician and singing and those kinds of things. But I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I had a lot of different ideas, and so I decided it was time to go to college, and I went to University of Colorado in Boulder. And I didn't again know what I wanted to do. I kind of knew I enjoyed to write. I had taken a lot of English classes. I was on the high school newspaper, and I enjoyed that. And I thought, well, maybe I'll look at journalism a little bit. And I went to tour. I'll never forget it. I went to tour the campus TV station one day, and they opened the door, and I walked into the studio, and it was like a light bulb went off. And I
Wow.
mean, literally for me, that was it. I said, oh, this is it. I found it. This is what I want to do. And from that point, I had to get into the journalism school. So I had to do the first couple of years, just sort of general ed at college, and then get into the journalism school. Um, and that's where you learn the fine points of, being a journalist, how to, ask questions and what's important about it. And you learn to, if you're going to get into broadcast TV, how to work the cameras and in front of the cameras and behind the cameras and produce and direct and all of the things, a very wide encompassing degree. And when I was finished with that, it came time to try to find a job. And, back then, this tells you how many years it's been. In order to get a job in TV news, you had to have a reel of work. So it was back then videotapes. And this was when videotapes were just coming out, right? So
Hmm.
they were big and they were expensive. Each tape was like $30. Each video cassette was $30. So when it came time to graduate from college, my dad bought me two of them.
Hmm.
And he said, here, these are for you to put your resume tape on. That's what it was called. And what you would do is you would put a compilation of your work on this tape, and then you would mail it to TV stations across the country. And then you would ask them to send the tape back to you because they were so expensive back then. You couldn't afford to send a tape to every station or you'd go
Right.
broke. So you would send it to each station for the news director for a job that you were applying for. And then they would look at it and send it back to you invariably. And it took a while after graduating from college, but my first job took me to Duluth, Minnesota. I worked there for a couple of years. Then I knew some people who got hired here in Columbus, and I came to work in Columbus. I stayed here for the next 13 years. Then I moved to Portland, Oregon, and I was an anchor
Wow.
out there for 4 years. And then I came back to Columbus in 2003, and I've been here ever since. So that's kind of the nutshell of just sort of how I got started in broadcast TV news.
Oh my goodness, what a career! I mean, from Colorado, Minnesota, Columbus, Portland, back to Columbus, and this has been certainly the thing that you have enjoyed doing it, because you wouldn't have done it for so long, right?
Oh, I love what I do. I mean, what I've always thought about my career is that, I get to be a witness to history,
Mm,
and history is made every day, and it's not necessarily the big history that we think of, but the little history, the events that happen in our community. I get to be a witness to that. When I was out reporting on the streets, I would go out and cover stories every day, and then I would get to hopefully help the viewer experience what I experienced through my own eyes and through my own words and my own storytelling. I mean, in the end, journalists are storytellers. That's what we do for a living. And I always, took the most pride in writing a story that was comprehensive and interesting and engaging, using, my words, and then great visuals and sound and audio, and hopefully take the viewer along, for a ride on an interesting story and keep their attention for the minute and a half or 2 minutes that I would be given to tell a story on any given day. So, um, I love what I do. I've done it for decades now,
uh-huh.
and it's been a true joy, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Really, honestly, I love what I do for a living.
Well, I think it's evident. You can see it as you are, as you're behind the cameras, and you're doing it. So, as a news anchor, what are some of the main tools that you use every day in order to do what you do?
Yeah, I mean, you can't do what I do if you can't work a computer and type. So,
Okay.
I took typing class years ago. I don't know that they even teach typing class anymore, but that was a lifesaver to me when I got into the business, because
Uh-huh.
when I started, there were typewriters. We didn't have computers, so it
Oh
was
wow.
typewriting.
Hmm.
So that's, something you use every day. But obviously, being able to read and write and understand and analyze, um, and to be able to quickly think on your feet, because especially with what I do now, I'm a news anchor in the morning. I'm on the air from 4:25 until 9 a.m. Every morning. Most of what we say on the air is scripted for us. We're reading a teleprompter. That's the device that hooks on front of the camera, so the words are scrolling there. We don't memorize every script that we're saying, contrary to popular belief.
Right.
But there's a teleprompter there, and so I'm focused on reading the teleprompter. But then there are many moments that are just ad-libbed, where we're engaging with our co-anchor, or maybe the meteorologist, or our traffic anchor Katie, and those are unscripted. So you have to be able to, think quickly on your feet, and those I think are the most important things on a day-to-day basis. But as a reporter, when you're out on the streets and you're covering news, the most important thing is listening. You got to be a good listener, because you
Mm-hmm.
want to hear the story that people are telling. You want to know the questions you need to follow up and ask, and you ask the next question based on whatever the answer was you got for the previous question. Um, and and that's, I think, the most important thing. You want to be able to hear, listen, and then compose the story that you're going to present to the viewer at that point.
And so, if I heard you right, you said that you start your day at 4 in the morning or something like that. Let's
Yeah,
talk
my
about that. Let's talk about what's the
sure.
schedule like for you.
So if you're going to get into journalism, the one thing you need to know is that all bets are off for schedules, because news is a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day a year business. So you give up holidays.
Mhm.
Sometimes you may give up vacations. If something happens and you have to cover it, and it comes at a time when you're supposed to be on vacation, you may not get to have that. Um, you're working all hours. I've worked all shifts. Right now, as you say, I'm on at 4:25 a.m. So my alarm goes off at 2 a.m. I
Wow.
get out of bed. I'm pretty lucky in that I'm able to do it. I have two alarms. One goes off at 1:59, and that wakes me up, and I lay there for one more minute. Then the alarm goes off at 2, and I'm able to literally hop out of bed. I'm much better. there are a lot of people who struggle with that. Some of my colleagues I know set 4, 5, 6 alarms sometimes because they just can't get up.
Wow.
But for me, I have this ability to hop out of bed. So I get ready, go
Hmm.
to work. I'm there usually around 3:30. Um,
Wow.
I have to write what we call a flash briefing, which is a quick 2.5 minute synopsis of the news that people who have Alexa can ask for it in the morning. They could say, Alexa, what's my flash briefing? And it'll play. And so I have to put that together. And then I'm downstairs. I anchor the 4:25 to 5 a.m. newscast by myself. And then my partner Jessica joins me. And then, of course, we have meteorologist Buck Michael and Katie McKee as our traffic anchor. And then we go. So we're on ABC 6 from 4:25 until 7, and then we're on Fox 28 from 7 until 9. So I love the shift. I enjoy it because I'm out of the building usually by 11 o'clock every day. But I've
Wow.
also worked other shifts. I've worked the
Hmm.
standard sort of 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift. I've worked the 2 p.m. to 11:30 shift before. So I've done it all. And as I said, this business, you have to be willing and you just have to accept it. You can't say, well, I only want to work a 9 to 5 job. Then journalism isn't right for you because you're never going to get a 9 to 5 job in this business.
So there is a number of sacrifices that are involved with this, and personal life is affected by that. And I mean, your schedule is just unbelievable. But how long?
Absolutely, and yeah, you go into it knowing that as well.
Mm,
You know,
wow. So, for how long have you done this schedule?
yeah, I'm afraid to give my age out here, but I graduated from college in 1983, and my first job came in '84. It took me a while to land a job because the television news business is very competitive, as you can imagine. When you think
Mhm.
about it, it's gotten a little bit different now with the use of social media and Facebook Live and all of those things. But in the old days, there were 3 stations in a given market. So, for example, in Colorado, where I grew up, there were 3 markets: Grand Junction, Colorado Springs, and Denver,
Mm.
and that was it. So you think about it, there were 9 stations back then where you could find a job in the state of Colorado, and so if you didn't hit one of those stations, then you had to look elsewhere. So that's what I did. I chose states where I thought I would like to live,
Mhm.
and then I searched for markets within those states. Uh, Market size determines a lot of things, but for example, New York City is market number one.
Mhm.
LA is up there. Philadelphia, Chicago, those are the top markets.
Okay.
Columbus is market 34. And then you
Okay.
go down to that to Zanesville's maybe 200 something, 190 something, somewhere in there.
Oh
So
wow.
my first job was in Duluth, which was like
Mhm.
market 190 something. It was way at the bottom. And then you try to work your way up in the market. The higher you go in the market, the better the opportunities, the better the pay, and the better you'll be seen by larger numbers of people.
Well, and I have to ask you, you've been on live television so many, for so many minutes. If you were to count it, I don't know if you even
Oh,
could count them. But do you still get nervous?
um, I sometimes get nervous when there is breaking news, but it's almost like a nervous where you're trying to anticipate what's going to happen. So if, for
Okay.
example, something's happening and we're going totally off script now for the next hour, um,
Wow.
it could be an exciting sense of urgency, but it can make you a little bit nervous because you're trying to figure out where you're going to go, who you're going to talk to, what's going to happen. Um, but I mean, that's kind of why you get into journalism, is to cover stuff as it's happening. I mean, after all, the
Yeah.
word news is new. What's happening
Mm,
new, not what happened yesterday.
wow.
So, whenever an event's happening in front of you, that makes it more exciting. And so sometimes there's a nervous anticipation about what you're about to cover.
Mhm.
Um, but for the most part, no.
Okay. So there again, your ability of what you mentioned earlier, your ability to think quickly, to improvise, and to be able to do that. That's pretty good. Now, does most people, do you think this is something that you are born with, or is this something, the ability to improvise, or is this something that you can develop with time?
No, I think you can develop it. I think many people are not born to do it. You have to. I think I think some of what makes journalists good is if they have a background in some kind of performing arts, where they were a singer or a musician or acted in plays or maybe did some improv. And you don't get into this business to be an actor, but those kinds of skills I think can be helpful to you in the journalism field. And the thing is, it's really trial by fire. For example, my first TV job, we didn't have a live truck to be able to go live in the field, and so I really didn't get to practice that until I got to Columbus. And so you're thrown in, because I didn't have experience broadcasting any live events. It wasn't until I got here, and then, at the station I was working at, they covered everything live. So we probably had 6 live trucks or 7, and they would send out a crew to cover live events, and you'd go do it. And there was no practice. You were thrown in to do it. So, but I do think if you have some, ability from performing in some way, that can aid you in the live part of it, for sure.
Do you personally have any role models of people that you look up to in this field, or someone that influenced you when you got started?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, when I was in at the University of Colorado, there was a news anchor there in Denver named Bob Palmer, who had
Okay.
also graduated from Colorado. Nobody here would know who he is, and he's passed away since then. But I would watch his. I would come home from classes, and I would watch the news every day with Bob Palmer. I really looked up to him, and then got to work with him when I was in Denver as an intern at a TV station there in Denver. But in terms of national role models, I mean, I think the pinnacles for me were Peter Jennings, who I
Mhm.
just thought was just a terrific anchor and journalist,
Yes.
and Dan Rather, who I just have the utmost respect for and always have.
Wow. Uh, so you just mentioned something that is so intriguing. You would come home and watch someone every day. When you watch somebody for so long every day, they kind of like are part of your family, right? So do you encounter that as you go out in the streets and people see you? Do they?
Every day, every day, and I love it. It's a great benefit to this business. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and say, "Kurt, we love you. We watch you every day." Now, sometimes people, can be haters, and that goes with the business too. When you're out
Mm,
there in the public eye, people can like you, they can love you, they can hate you, and I've experienced all of it. But for the most part, people are very kind,
yeah.
um, and especially, as long as I've been here, it's weird because. Um, I now, it used to be when I first started to be like, oh, I watch you, every day. And now it's gotten to the point where people will say, well, I grew up watching you on TV. And that's great too. And then it gets to, I grew up watching you and now I have grandkids. And then you think, oh my gosh, how long have I been doing this? But I'm always flattered when people recognize me and come up and say something. It makes it all
Uh,
worthwhile. And we are part of
yeah.
their family. I mean,
Mhm.
when you think about it, some of the best days in the history of the nation, we've been there together on TV delivering it to you. But some of the
Yes.
worst days as well.
Right.
And there's something about news that brings people together. And so I never mind when people come up and say hello. I love it every time, and I always take a moment to say hi, thank them, shake hands, whatever they want. They want a picture, great. Want me to sign
Yes.
something? Happy to do that. You just want a hug? A hug is fine too. Whatever you need, a handshake. Happy to do it. So
Well,
I'm
I
always
can
grateful.
attest. I can attest to that. We've met you in different events before, and you
Yeah.
were so humble and so kind, and we really
Ah.
thank you for who you are. Um,
Ah.
but I wanted to ask you, what are some of the most memorable moments in your career, or some of the news most important that you have covered before?
Yeah. I mean, after decades of it, it's kind of hard to pinpoint one, but I can pinpoint a handful for you.
Okay.
Um, One of the most interesting stories I ever did was I got to burn down a house.
Mm,
So this was years ago, and the whole point of the story was to teach people how to get out of a house alive if their house catches on fire. So we put
wow.
cameras inside a home, and we worked with the fire department, of course, and
Hmm.
we actually burned it down. And we had the cameras rolling in various areas so we could show how smoke, when there's a fire, gathers at the top of a ceiling, and then it's like a black curtain that slowly goes down to the ground as the smoke collects at the ceiling. And so the whole point was to tell people, if you're ever in a house fire, crawl, get to the ground, because that's the best chance for you to be able to breathe, and then try to crawl your way out. And the other thing that we were able to show was the importance of closing your bedroom door at night. A lot of people don't sleep with their bedroom door closed, but that will protect you if there's a fire someplace else in your house.
Wow.
It'll protect you from the
Mm.
smoke getting in and
Mhm.
possibly, suffocating you and your family. So this was done probably in 94 or 95. We did this, and it won a prestigious award called an Edward R. Murrow Award, which is a prestigious national award. So that one is near and dear to my heart because we taught people, something about how to save their lives and their family. And then after we did it, the Columbus Fire Department made it available for schools. We made copies of it, and it was distributed all over. And it may probably still be in some libraries around here, so you could go check it out and and watch it. So that would be probably the one that I think had the most impact for the viewer. One of the most enjoyable for me, just as a human, was to cover a couple of space shuttle launches. Years ago, there was a mission called the Buckeye Mission, and it was staffed entirely by people who grew up or graduated from colleges here in Ohio. And so I got to go down to Cape Canaveral and cover that. Part of that was live on TV when it launched. And so we got to train with them at the Johnson Space Center in Texas. And we got to be in a mock up of a space shuttle and kind of hang out with the shuttle astronauts while they were going through some of their, pre-training, which was just remarkable to be there with them. And they were so engaging and helpful and helping us be able to tell their story. Some of those stories are still on YouTube, so they still exist out there. So that was fun. And then actually for the day of the launch, got to cover that. And just, you can't put it into words, the power of the space shuttle taking off, lifting off from the Kennedy Space Center, the whole ground shaking, the sound of the engine so powerful you can't even talk, you can't even hear as it rockets into space. So that was neat. And then I got to go back and cover a night mission too, which was incredible for a variety of other reasons. And then one other quick one that comes to mind since you asked me, I got to fly at an air show that was at Rickenbacker when they used to do air shows out there. I got to fly in a jet. It was
Oh
a
wow.
Spanish jet called a Saida. It was a two-person jet. I sat in the back and we did aerobatics and flew upside down and curly cues and all of that. And we pulled 6 Gs of force, which is pretty good bit. I did pass
Wow.
out when we hit one of them. My head dangled to the side, and the pilot's just laughing his butt off up front because they love to put the TV people through heck when they're flying us around. But those would probably be the 3 stories I think that are most memorable to me.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, there's so many varied things that you do. That's incredible. Um, so I'm starting to get questions already from the audience. So I'll read some of these
Sure.
questions. Is education in journalism necessary to go into broadcasting?
Absolutely. I think
Mm.
what makes a good journalist is to have a good, well rounded, sort of liberal arts education. I like to say that we know a little bit about a lot of different things. We don't know a lot about a little, we know a little about a lot. And I think it really helps you because you don't know day to day what kind of story you're going to be covering. One
Mhm.
day, it could be the space shuttle. One day, you might be covering a murder, or you might be covering a
Wow.
scandal at City Hall, or you might be covering, there's an illness that's affecting deer out in the country, or there's an infection of coronavirus. You just don't know. So I think to have a little basic knowledge of everything is very helpful. So I think that you're a little bit versed in math and science and geography and English and history and those kinds of things, political science. Um, all of that comes together to just kind of help form you, so you have a better idea of the questions you'll need to ask depending on the story you're going to cover. I mean, it's kind of like, today kids play Fortnite where they parachute in and then they
Yes.
take off and play their game. Well, as a journalist, you parachute in every day to a different scene.
Wow.
And, if you're in the video game, you take off your gear and suddenly you got to figure out where you are and what you're doing. And that's the same thing that journalists do every day.
Wow, that's amazing. Kurt, you, because of the work you do, there is so many, unfortunately, bad news that you get to
Yeah.
also share in difficult times with people. But it seems like you keep a pretty good positive attitude, and this is one of the reasons why we love you. But what do you do to keep your hope in humanity, to keep a positive outlook in life, especially in your job when you're the first one that hears so many bad things?
It's interesting, and I'm kind of tearing up thinking about it because it's hard. I'll be honest with you, it's hard delivering bad news every day. And
Mm,
if you're a good reporter, you have compassion for people and you feel for people. And so, there are many times where we'll deliver a story, and I mean, it's truly touching. And they'll come back to us, and it takes us a moment to compose ourselves because what we've just delivered has been difficult. I did a story many years ago with a little boy named Kyle Clark. I still remember his name. He was in need of a liver transplant, and I went and met his family, and I met him, and he was just a cute little boy, and he was on a list, badly needing a liver. And I
mm,
was following his story, and I went back to see him several times. And then the next time I got to him, his face was swollen from, the steroids they were pumping into him. But it looked like there wasn't going to be um, a liver for him. And then hope, we just kept hoping and hoping, and unfortunately, a liver never came. And this little beautiful boy died. And
mm.
you know, his parents called me right away, and said, will you come to Children's Hospital and be with us?
Oh wow.
Not as a reporter, but just as
Mm.
someone who had grown
Yeah,
to love them and their family.
yeah.
And I found myself at Children's Hospital holding him, next to these grieving parents. And there was no camera there, and it wasn't for that reason. But I did
Mhm.
have to tell the story later that day on the air to, to talk about this little boy and this problem, and how unfair the world can be. And this little boy needed a liver, and it didn't happen. And maybe it would motivate someone else to get on a transplant, to get on a
Mhm.
donation list. Join the donation. And so, it was hard, and it is today. I get choked up thinking about it. And
Wow.
so it's not easy.
Mhm.
And there are days when you do sort of throw up your hands, and you just have to escape and get away and try to recharge and hope for a better day the next day. But I'd be lying if I said that it doesn't matter and it doesn't affect us, because it does. It
Mm,
does.
mm. Wow. Wow. And another thing is that, especially in the day that we live in today, social media has come in and
Yeah.
taken a different world. How is social media affecting broadcasting and journalism today?
Totally changed the way we do what we do. In the old days, if we had an exclusive story, we would hold it for the lead at 6 o'clock p.m. We wouldn't tell a soul what the story was. We wouldn't let anybody know. We wouldn't even tease it necessarily. 6 o'clock, the big story would happen right then, and you'd tune in, and there it was. Well, now, if we get a story, if it's an exclusive, it doesn't matter. The first thing we do is we tweet it out, we Facebook it, we post it on Instagram. We put it on our website, and we get people there. And it's remarkable that the cell phone has changed the way we do everything, because
Mhm.
people now get the news when they want, where they want, at whatever hour they want, however they want. So the days of people, when I grew up, if you wanted to watch the news, you had one shot. It was at 6 o'clock, and you'd
Mm.
sit down and watch it, or you missed it. There was no replay, there was
Oh,
no videotape. And so as we progress to where we are today, it's changed it dramatically. In the old days, a reporter would go out with a camera person and we'd shoot a story. We'd come back, the reporter would write it, the photographer would edit it, and then it would air at its time slot during the news. Now, a lot of these journalists that are hired today are called multimedia journalists. So they do it all. So they're the reporter. They also are the camera person. They
Wow.
also edit their story. They also post it to social media. They also do Facebook Live. Um, and they have to have so many more skills in that realm than we did. And, social media plays such a different role because people now, um, years ago, if you wanted to reach out to a reporter, you had to find their address, write them a letter, or track down their phone number and give them a phone call. Now, because we're all on Facebook, Twitter, people can message us constantly, and they do, which is good and bad, because, yeah, you're in a movie or whatever, and you're getting a message from somebody who wants to tweet you or text you, but it may be a good story. So they're
Mm,
suggesting something too, and it makes us much more accessible. So people feel like,
wow.
we're a lot closer to them. And so the last thing I'll say about this is, um, we are, as journalists, expected. It's part of your job now to engage with people on social media. It's what we do, and you're expected to do so. It's part of the job description. So one day, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I was filling in on the morning newscast. I was working a different shift at the time, a night shift, but I was filling in on the morning shift. And when I came down to get ready to go to work, we had 3 cats then. And when I came down to leave, they all got in a funny position. And one was on a table, and one was on a counter, and one was in the kitchen. And as I was about to leave, I saw them sitting there looking at me, and I thought, man, they're up with me. It's almost 3 o'clock. What are they doing up? It's kind of cute. I'm going to take a picture. So I snapped
Mhm.
a selfie with them and posted it on social media and said, hey, look, the cats are up early with me. Isn't that funny? So fast forward a couple weeks later when I was filling in again on the morning show, and I come down to leave at that same time, and there they are in the same position. So weird. So I took another picture and I thought, cute, isn't it? Cats are, up early with me again. Here we go. Snapped a picture. Then fast forward maybe, I don't know, a year later, and then I became the morning anchor. So I start my job. I come down here, and there they are. So I snapped a picture, and
Yeah.
with a funny comment. And I came down the next day, and there they were, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And I would take a picture every day. Well, suddenly it took on a life of its own, to the
Wow.
point where, my fans love it. It puts them in a good mood. It's something fun that they can look forward to every day. The Dispatch ended up doing a story on it a couple of years ago, that Kurt and his cats. And, the viewers have been along for us for the highs and the lows. We have
Yeah.
lost several cats since then, a couple of
Oh.
dogs since then. But,
Mm.
the people, for the most part, really seem to enjoy it. And I know it's weird. It's the same picture every day. It's not photoshopped. It's me. You can check my tie. The tie I'm in is the tie I'm wearing. But I try to be somewhat positive in the morning. So when people are getting up, one of the first things they may see may be this fun post with Kurt and his cats.
Yeah.
Um, and it may put them in a good mood for the day.
Could you please tell us where we can find it for the people that
Yes,
know how to see it?
absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter at Kurt WSYX6. So it's at Kurt WSYX6. And then my Facebook page is Kurt Ludlow TV. That's my official ABC6 Fox 28 Facebook page.
Wow, fantastic. Kurt, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough for giving us this time. We know you have a difficult schedule, and we really thank you for being willing to stop in here with us, and for being here part of the Columbus Leadership Council. I know you have helped us for many years, and we are so thankful for your partnership and your friendship.
Well, Dan, thank you for all that you all do. I'm big fans of the Literacy Council. You're unsung heroes. There are so many people whose lives have been changed by you. And here I go, getting emotional again, by you and all of the people that work there, and the volunteers who are teaching people. So, I mean, it's really remarkable what you're all doing. And for those of you who may be watching or may watch this later, and have any other, special questions or requests, or want to know any more, shoot me an email, shoot me a message on Facebook or Twitter. I will respond, I promise. And we're all in this together, folks. We're all trying to make the world a better place, and it takes all of us. So Dan, to you and Joy, and everybody else who is there, um, thanks for all that you guys are doing, and so appreciative of everything. So
Same here. Thank you so much, Kurt. We will let you go. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we appreciate your time once again.
all right, be well, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Love you all.
All right. And to everyone else, we'll see you again next week at 1 p.m. in A Walk in My Shoes. Have a great day.